A lonely cowboy saved her in the mountains, never knowing she was a millionaire who would love him. "Don't move, you'll make it worse." Jackson gripped her leg firmly, his calloused hands steadying the wound as blood seeped through her torn hiking pants. "Get off me!" Olivia gasped, her face contorted in pain. "Who are you? Where am I?" "Name's Jackson Thorne. Your helicopter crashed about 2 miles east of here." He examined the gash on her leg, his expression grim beneath the shadow of his cowboy hat. "This needs cleaning before infection sets in." Olivia tried to pull away, wincing as pain shot through her leg. "My helicopter? I can't remember." "Easy now," he said, his voice softening slightly. "You hit your head pretty hard. Memory might take some time to come back." The mountain air felt thin in Olivia's lungs as she looked around wildly. Pine trees stretched in every direction, the only sound the whisper of wind through branches and the distant call of birds. Nothing looked familiar. "I need to get to a hospital," she insisted, trying to stand. Jackson's firm hand on her shoulder kept her down. "Nearest hospital's 4 hours away, and a storm's coming. My cabin's just over that ridge. It's your best chance right now." 24 hours earlier, Olivia Reed had been sitting in the Boston headquarters of Reed Innovations, staring at financial reports that showed unmistakable discrepancies. Her father, tech magnate Robert Reed, had long since gone home, leaving her to prepare for tomorrow's board meeting. The numbers didn't add up, and the trail led directly to projects overseen by her fiancé, Curtis Blackwood. Working late again? Curtis had appeared in her doorway, his designer suit still immaculate despite the late hour. "These Blackwood Development joint venture numbers," she'd said, not looking up. "They're off by millions." Curtis's laugh had been practiced, casual. "A counting error, I'm sure. I'll have someone look into it tomorrow." But Olivia had seen something in his eyes, a flicker of calculation that had crystallized all her doubts about their engagement. After he'd left, she'd copied the files to her personal drive and made a decision. The company helicopter was fueled and waiting. Her father had planned to use it tomorrow for a trip to New York, but right now, Olivia needed space to think. She'd flown north, with no particular destination in mind, just away, from Boston, from her father's expectations, from Curtis's increasingly transparent ambition. The mechanical failure had come without warning, alarms blaring as the helicopter lost altitude over the Montana wilderness. Now, as Jackson Thorne assessed her injuries, Olivia could remember the crash, but nothing before it. Not her name, not why she'd been flying over remote mountains, nothing of her life in Boston. "Can you walk?" Jackson asked, helping her sit up. "I think so," she grimaced, putting weight on her good leg. Jackson nodded, then surprised her by scooping her up in his arms. "We need to move. Storm's coming faster than I thought." In Boston, Robert Reed slammed his fist on his mahogany desk. "What do you mean she took the helicopter? Where?" His assistant, Eleanor, stood her ground. "The flight log shows she left at 11:30 p.m. No destination was filed." Curtis Blackwood paced the office, his concern seemingly genuine. "This isn't like her. She was looking at some accounting files when I left her last night." Robert narrowed his eyes. "Which files?" "Just quarterly reports," Curtis replied smoothly. "Nothing concerning. She's been under stress. Maybe she needed a break." Robert turned to his security chief. "Track the helicopter, now." Back in Montana, Jackson carried Olivia through the gathering storm to a small log cabin nestled against the mountainside. Inside was sparse but clean, a stone fireplace, worn furniture, basic kitchen, and bookshelves filled with well-used volumes. "Not much," he said, setting her down on a couch, "but it's warm and dry." Olivia watched as he efficiently gathered first aid supplies. "You live here alone?" "Just me and the livestock." Jackson knelt beside her, cutting away the fabric around her wound. "This'll sting," she hissed as he cleaned the gash with antiseptic. "You're good at this. Animals get hurt. People too. Out here, you learn to handle it yourself." "Thank you," she whispered, suddenly overwhelmed by how close she'd come to dying alone on that mountainside. Jackson met her eyes briefly, then looked away, just doing what anyone would. "I don't think that's true," Olivia said, studying his face, weathered by sun and wind, guarded but not unkind. As he bandaged her leg, thunder cracked overhead, and rain began to pound the roof. "You should rest," he said, standing. "I'll check on the animals, then make some food." Left alone, Olivia tried desperately to remember who she was. Her clothes were expensive, that much she could tell, and her hands showed no signs of hard labor. A watch on her wrist looked valuable, but her name, her history, her purpose in being here all remained blank. When Jackson returned, soaking wet from the rain, he found her examining the books on his shelves. Philosophy, history, animal husbandry, and, surprisingly, several volumes of poetry. "You read Frost," she said, holding up a collection. Jackson took off his wet coat. "Problem with that?" "No," she smiled slightly. "Just didn't expect it." "Because cowboys are supposed to be simple." His tone was challenging but not angry. "I didn't say that. Didn't have to." He moved to the kitchen and began preparing a simple meal. "You hungry?" Olivia nodded, realizing she was starving. "I wish I could remember my name." Jackson glanced at her. "Doc should be able to check you over once the storm passes. My sister Maya, she's a vet, but she knows human medicine too." "A vet?" Olivia repeated. "For your livestock." "Cattle ranch," he explained. "Small operation. Been in my family 3 generations. May not be for much longer, though." "Why not?" Something dark crossed his face. "Money. Always comes down to money, doesn't it?" Olivia felt an odd pang at his words, as though they touched something just beyond her reach. "Eat," he said, setting a bowl of stew before her. "Then sleep. Memory usually comes back, they say." As night fell and the storm raged outside, Olivia felt strangely safe in this stranger's cabin, miles from anywhere, her identity a mystery even to herself. What she couldn't know was that in Boston, her father's security team had already pinpointed the helicopter's last transmission coordinates, or that Curtis Blackwood was already calculating how to use her disappearance to his advantage. For tonight, she was simply a woman with no past, being cared for by a cowboy with no future, 2 strangers brought together by fate and a mountain storm, neither aware that their lives had changed forever. Sunlight streamed through the cabin windows as Olivia woke, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of yesterday crashed back. The helicopter, her injured leg, the stranger who had saved her. Speaking of whom, Jackson stood at the small kitchen stove, his back to her as he stirred something in a cast-iron pan. He'd already been out. His boots by the door were muddy, and his shirt had damp patches from morning dew. "Coffee's ready," he said without turning. "Figured you'd wake up soon." Olivia pushed herself upright, testing her injured leg. "How did you know I was awake?" Breathing changed. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and brought it to her. "How's the leg?" "Sore, but better." She accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thank you for everything." Jackson nodded once, a man of few words by nature. Remembered anything? Fragments had come to her in dreams. A sleek office, arguing voices, the feeling of suffocation, but nothing concrete. Not really, just feelings. "My sister's coming by this afternoon. Roads are clear enough now." Olivia sipped the strong coffee. "What did you tell her about me?" "The truth. Found you in a crashed helicopter." He returned to the stove. "Eggs okay?" "Yes, fine." She watched him move efficiently around the small space. "How long have you lived here alone?" Jackson scraped eggs onto 2 plates. 10 years since my grandfather died." "No wife? Family?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not everyone needs company." They ate in silence, Olivia sensing she'd touched a nerve. After breakfast, Jackson helped her outside to a rough-hewn bench on the porch, where the spring sunshine could warm her face. "I need to check fences on the north pasture," he said, pulling on his worn leather gloves. "Will you be okay here for a couple hours?" Olivia nodded. "I'm not going anywhere fast with this leg." After he rode off on a chestnut mare, Olivia examined her surroundings properly for the first time. Jackson's ranch was modest, a small cabin, barn, corral, and outbuildings, all weathered but well maintained. Beyond the cleared area, forests climbed up mountainsides, with snow still visible on distant peaks. The beauty was undeniable, a stark contrast to what? The memory hovered just out of reach. She noticed a horse watching her from the corral, midnight black with a wild look in its eyes, different from the docile mare Jackson had ridden. "That's Midnight," came a female voice, "meanest horse in Montana." "Nist." Olivia turned to see a woman approaching, medical bag in hand. She resembled Jackson around the eyes, but where he was stoic, her face held easy warmth. "You must be Maya," Olivia said. Jackson mentioned you'd be coming. And you must be the mysterious helicopter lady. Maya sat beside her, setting down her bag. My brother said you have amnesia. Seems that way. Olivia offered a slight smile. I can remember how to talk, basic things about the world, but nothing personal, not even my name. Maya began examining her head gently, checking for signs of concussion. Retrograde amnesia isn't uncommon with head trauma, usually temporary. She paused, studying Olivia's watch. That's a Patek Philippe, isn't it? Worth about $50,000. Olivia looked down at the timepiece in shock. I wouldn't know. Maya moved on to check the leg wound. My brother did a good job here. Clean, no signs of infection. He seems to know what he's doing. Jackson's competent at everything he tries, just terrible at asking for help. Maya repacked her bag. Your amnesia should resolve within days or weeks. Any fragments coming back yet? Olivia hesitated. I had dreams. An office, maybe? People arguing. Good sign. It'll come. Maya stood, then added casually, You know, not many people fly private helicopters. If you wanted, I could make some calls, see if anyone's reported someone missing. The suggestion triggered an inexplicable panic in Olivia. Not yet, she said quickly. Please. Maya raised an eyebrow but nodded. Your choice. But Jackson can't play mountain rescue forever. He's got enough troubles. The ranch? Olivia asked. He mentioned money problems. This land's been in our family for generations, but small ranches can't compete with corporate operations nowadays. Maya sighed. He's too stubborn to sell, even though developers have been circling for years. After Maya left, promising to return in a few days, Olivia hobbled to the corral where Midnight paced restlessly. The horse eyed her warily. You don't trust easily either, huh? She murmured. To her surprise, the horse approached the fence, nostrils flaring as it assessed her. Tentatively, Olivia raised her hand. Midnight sniffed it, then allowed her to stroke his nose. Well, I'll be damned, Jackson said from behind her. He usually tries to bite strangers. Olivia turned, startled. We understand each other. Jackson joined her at the fence, keeping a respectful distance from the horse. Maya came by? Yes. She thinks my memory will come back eventually. He nodded, then asked, Hungry? Thought we could eat outside. Weather's good. As April days passed, Olivia's strength returned, though her memory remained elusive. She began helping around the ranch, simple tasks at first, then more complex ones as her leg healed. Jackson showed her how to feed the animals, mend fences, even how to ride, starting with the gentle mare, though she kept eyeing Midnight. Not yet, Jackson would say, catching her glance. He's not ready. One morning, Olivia woke to urgent knocking. Jackson was already up and opening the door to Maya, who looked concerned. Daisy's having trouble with her calf, Maya explained. Breech birth. Jackson grabbed his coat. Where's the vet? Another emergency, other side of the county. It's just us. They hurried to the barn, Olivia following despite her limp. Inside, a cow lay on her side, clearly in distress. We need to turn the calf, Maya explained, rolling up her sleeves, or we'll lose both of them. For the next hour, Olivia watched Jackson and Maya work with practiced coordination, talking in terse phrases as they fought to save the animals. When Maya's smaller hands proved insufficient to turn the calf, Jackson looked to Olivia. Need another set of hands, you up for this? Without hesitation, Olivia joined them, following their instructions precisely. By dawn, a wobbly calf stood nursing from its exhausted mother, and the three humans sat slumped against the barn wall, covered in substances Olivia preferred not to identify. You did good, Jackson said quietly. Most city folks would have fainted. How do you know I'm from a city? Olivia asked. Jackson almost smiled. Just a hunch. That night, after Maya had gone and they'd both showered, Olivia found Jackson on the porch, nursing a rare glass of whiskey. Mind if I join you? She asked. He nodded toward the other chair. They sat in comfortable silence until Jackson spoke. Thank you for helping with the calf. I'm glad I could. She looked at the stars, brighter than she'd ever seen them, though she couldn't remember where she'd seen stars before. It felt good. Useful. It was. He took another sip. Ranch hand I used to have before money got tight. He'd say birthing calves was God's way of reminding us life matters. Is that what you believe? Jackson considered the question. I believe in what I can touch. land, animals. Work that means something. And people? Olivia asked softly. His eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. Some people. In Boston, the search for Olivia Reed had intensified. Satellite images had narrowed the helicopter's crash site to a 50-mile radius in Montana's wilderness. Robert Reed had chartered a private jet. I'm coming with you, Curtis had insisted, his concern seemingly genuine. Fine. Robert barely acknowledged him, focused on the search coordinates. If someone's found her, I want to know why they haven't reported it. What neither man knew was that Eleanor, Robert's assistant, had discovered the same financial discrepancies Olivia had found. Unlike Olivia, she had kept digging, uncovering a pattern that pointed directly to Curtis Blackwood systematically siphoning funds from joint ventures between Reed Innovations and Blackwood Development. Eleanor hesitated, uncertain whether to bring her findings to Robert while he was focused on finding his daughter. But as she reviewed land acquisition documents in Montana, a familiar name caught her eye. Thorn Ranch, targeted by Blackwood Development for a luxury resort project. Back at the ranch, Jackson found Olivia in the corral with Midnight, the horse now calmly accepting her touch. He trusts you, Jackson said, leaning on the fence. Maybe he knows I'm as lost as he is. She stroked the horse's neck. You said he was wild when you got him? Jackson nodded. Found him half-starved after a forest fire 3 years ago. Everybody said to put him down. He was too damaged to save. But you didn't. No. Their eyes met again. Guess I'm stubborn that way. As spring brought green to the mountains, something grew between Jackson and Olivia. Trust, understanding, perhaps more. They worked side by side, ate together, sometimes read by the fire in companionable silence. She learned his routines, his rare smiles, the way he watched sunsets as if saying goodbye to an old friend. One evening as they rode the property boundaries, Olivia now confident on horseback, they paused on a ridge overlooking a valley painted golden by the setting sun. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen, she said, then laughed softly. At least that I can remember. Jackson studied her face, softened by the evening light. Memory coming back at all? Bits and pieces, nothing useful. She turned to him. But I'm not sure I want to remember anymore. What if I like this life better than my old one? Everyone has responsibilities, he said quietly. Can't run from them forever. Is that what you think I'm doing, running? The question hung between them as the sun slipped behind distant mountains. Instead of answering, Jackson reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. For a moment they sat frozen, horses side by side, the air charged between them. Then Jackson leaned forward, closing the distance, and kissed her, hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty as she responded. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Olivia felt as though something had clicked into place. Not memory, but possibility. We should head back, Jackson said, his voice rough. Getting dark. As they rode home in twilight, neither spoke of the kiss, yet something had fundamentally changed. Unknown to both, their fragile sanctuary was about to be shattered by memories returning, by outsiders closing in, and by forces set in motion long before Olivia had fallen from the sky into Jackson's life. We need supplies, Jackson announced over breakfast, 2 weeks after their first kiss. Thought we'd drive into town today. Olivia looked up from her coffee, surprised. In the month she'd been at the ranch, they'd never once left its boundaries. Both of us? Legs healed enough. Besides, he added, a rare glint of humor in his eyes, you must be sick of seeing just my face every day. The drive to town took nearly an hour, their conversation easy now, punctuated by comfortable silences. Jackson pointed out landmarks along the way. The ridge where his grandfather had built the original homestead, the creek that never dried even in the worst droughts, the distant mountains where he'd tracked a wounded elk for 2 days as a teenager. Morrison, Montana was barely more than a crossroads, a general store, diner, gas station, and a handful of other businesses serving the scattered ranching community. Jackson parked his battered truck in front of the general store. Hendersons have owned this place for 4 generations, he explained as they walked in. They stock everything from horseshoe nails to wedding dresses. Inside, an elderly man looked up from the counter. Jackson Thorne, twice in 1 month, must be some kind of record. Hey, Bill, Jackson nodded. Need the usual, plus some extra. He glanced at Olivia. Got a guest staying a while. Bill's eyebrows rose as he noticed Olivia. Well, now that is news. Don't believe I've had the pleasure, miss. She's just passing through, Jackson cut in before Olivia could respond. Had some trouble up in the mountains. Understanding dawned on Bill's face. Ah, you must be the helicopter lady Maya mentioned. Whole town's been wondering. Olivia smiled politely. Yes, I had an accident. Jackson's been kind enough to let me recover at his place. While Jackson collected supplies, Olivia wandered the store, oddly fascinated by the eclectic merchandise. A television played in the corner, where a few locals watched a news program. Turn it up, Bill, someone called. That's about that missing tech heiress. Olivia's attention drifted toward the screen as Bill raised the volume. The search continues for Olivia Reed, daughter of tech magnate Robert Reed, missing for over a month after taking a company helicopter without filing a flight plan, the reporter announced. Reed Innovations has offered a substantial reward for information leading to her whereabouts. The screen showed a photograph, a polished woman with Olivia's face, though with shorter, more styled hair, wearing an elegant business suit at what appeared to be a corporate event. Olivia froze, the world narrowing to that image. Memories crashed through the dam in her mind. Boardrooms and benefit galas, arguments with her father, late nights reviewing suspicious financial documents, Curtis's calculating smile as he placed an enormous diamond ring on her finger. You okay? Jackson's voice seemed to come from far away. You look like you've seen a ghost. She turned to him, words failing. On the television, the reporter continued. Reed was last seen at the company's Boston headquarters. Her fiancé, Curtis Blackwood of Blackwood Development, joined her father in making an emotional plea today. The screen cut to a press conference where a distinguished older man and a handsome younger one stood before a forest of microphones. We just want Olivia home safe, the younger man, Curtis said, his voice breaking convincingly. Whatever happened, whatever she's going through, we can work it out together. Jackson looked from the screen to Olivia, comprehension dawning. That's you. The drive back to the ranch was silent, tension thick between them. Once inside the cabin, Jackson paced while Olivia sat at the table, head in her hands. So you're Olivia Reed, he finally said. Tech heiress. Yes. Her voice was small. And you remembered all along? No. She looked up, pleading. I swear, Jackson, I only just remembered when I saw that broadcast. Even now, there are holes. But you remember enough. His voice hardened. Enough to know you're engaged to that suit on TV. Olivia winced. It's complicated. Seems simple to me. Jackson's laugh was bitter. Rich girl runs away from her rich life, has her adventure with the simple cowboy, then goes back to reality. That's not fair. No? He stopped pacing. Tell me what is fair, Olivia. That's your name, right? Or have you been lying about that too? I never lied to you, she stood, anger flaring. I didn't remember. Convenient. You think I crashed a helicopter on purpose? Tears welled in her eyes. You think I wanted this? Jackson's expression softened slightly. No, but now you remember who you are. Your fiancé is looking for you. Your father... I took that helicopter because I found evidence Curtis was embezzling from joint ventures between our companies, Olivia interrupted. I needed space to think, to decide what to do. She pressed her fingers to her temples. I remember arguing with him that night. He tried to dismiss it, said it was an accounting error. Jackson studied her face. And your engagement? A business arrangement, more or less. She twisted her hands together. Our fathers thought it would be good for both companies. I went along with it because... She trailed off. Because? Because it was easier than fighting, she admitted, until I found those discrepancies. Before Jackson could respond, headlights swept across the windows as a vehicle pulled up outside. Maya burst through the door moments later, waving a document. Jackson, you need to see this. It just came certified mail to my office. She stopped short, sensing the tension. What's going on? Ask Olivia Reed, Jackson said, emphasizing the name. Turns out our guest is a millionaire. Maya's eyes widened. The missing heiress, that's... She shook her head. Never mind that now, this is more urgent. She thrust the document at Jackson. It's an eminent domain notice. They're taking the ranch. Jackson scanned the paper, his face darkening. They can't do this. This is private property. They're claiming it for a public good project, a resort development that will revitalize the local economy. Maya's voice dripped sarcasm. Blackwood Development is listed as the contractor. Olivia's blood ran cold. Blackwood Development? Your fiancé's company, right? Maya challenged. Quite a coincidence. No. Olivia shook her head. He couldn't have known I was here. Unless he did. Jackson's eyes met hers, anger and hurt evident. Unless this whole thing was some kind of setup. That's ridiculous, Olivia protested. I nearly died in that crash. Jackson, Maya intervened. I know you're upset, but this isn't about her. This is about our land. The hearing's in 6 weeks. We need to fight this. With what? Jackson crumpled the paper. Money we don't have? Lawyers we can't afford? I can help, Olivia said quietly. Jackson's laugh was harsh. No thanks. I think you've helped enough. That night, Olivia packed the few belongings she'd accumulated, mostly clothes Maya had brought her. Her memory, while not completely restored, had filled in enough gaps for her to understand who she was and what she needed to do. When she emerged from the guest room at dawn, Jackson was already at the kitchen table, looking as if he hadn't slept. I need to go back, she said simply. He nodded once. Maya will drive you to the airport in Bozeman. Jackson, I swear I had nothing to do with any of this. Olivia stepped closer. What happened between us was a mistake, he finished for her. People like you always see people like me as some kind of rustic experience, a story to tell at cocktail parties. The words stung like a physical blow. That's not what this was. It doesn't matter now. He stood, not meeting her eyes. Your real life is waiting. As Maya's car disappeared down the driveway hours later, Jackson turned to find Midnight watching him from the corral. The horse nickered softly, searching for Olivia. She's gone, Jackson told the animal. Back where she belongs. In Boston, Olivia's return created a media frenzy. Her father enveloped her in a rare embrace while Curtis hovered nearby, his concerns seemingly genuine. She recounted a modified version of events, the crash, the amnesia, the kindness of a local rancher who'd taken her in until her memory returned. You should have contacted us immediately, her father scolded the moment they were private. I didn't know who I was, Olivia replied, the half-truth bitter on her tongue. Her old penthouse felt foreign, too sleek, too perfect, too empty. The first night home, she stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, missing the mountain stars with an ache that surprised her. The next morning, she went to the Reed Innovations offices, determined to restart her investigation into Curtis's financial machinations. To her surprise, Eleanor was waiting with a thick folder. I found what you were looking for, the assistant said without preamble, and more, much more. Together, they reviewed documents showing a pattern of systematic fraud, funds diverted, proposals falsified, bribes paid. And buried among land acquisition files was the smoking gun, a memo from Curtis to Blackwood Development's legal team, dated just days after Olivia's disappearance, instructing them to expedite the Montana resort project. Special emphasis on the Thorne property, Curtis had written. Use whatever legal means necessary to secure it ASAP. Olivia felt sick. He knew. Somehow he figured out where I was. The helicopter had a tracking system, Eleanor confirmed. Standard procedure. When search teams couldn't locate you immediately, they assumed it had malfunctioned. But Curtis had access to the data, Olivia finished. He knew exactly where I'd crashed. And who found you? Eleanor nodded grimly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Olivia stared at the evidence before her, anger crystallizing into resolve. Whatever it takes. Days later, as she sat across from Curtis at an upscale restaurant, her first public appearance since returning, she felt nothing but contempt for the man she'd once agreed to. Marry. To new beginnings, Curtis raised his champagne glass. I'm so relieved you're safe, darling. When you're ready to talk about what happened. Actually, Olivia interrupted, I'd rather talk about Blackwood Development's Montana resort project. Curtis's smile faltered slightly. Business already? You should be resting. I'm particularly interested in the Thorne Ranch property. She kept her voice casual. Seems like quite a coincidence, doesn't it? I'm not following. That of all the ranches in Montana, you'd target the one where I happen to be staying. Olivia sipped her water, almost as if you knew exactly where I was all along. Curtis's expression hardened momentarily before he recovered. Don't be ridiculous. The Thorne property was identified months ago as an ideal location. Was it? Olivia placed her engagement ring on the table between them. I think we both know that's not true. Back in Montana, Jackson faced his own battles. The local ranchers had rallied around him, forming a coalition to fight the development, but they were outmatched by Blackwood's legal resources. Maya had discovered potential environmental violations in the proposal, giving them a temporary reprieve, but time was running short. One evening, as Jackson sat on his porch watching Midnight pace restlessly in the corral, the horse had been inconsolable since Olivia's departure. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't give up, I haven't." He stared at the message for a long time, torn between hope and the certainty that whatever had briefly existed between him and Olivia Reed belonged to a different world than the one either of them truly inhabited. The environmental report clearly shows endangered species habitat across 20% of the proposed development area, Maya announced, spreading maps across Jackson's kitchen table. 5 other local ranchers leaned in, coffee cups in hand. "That should trigger an automatic review. Blackwood's lawyers will say the studies are inconclusive," said Frank Miller, whose ranch bordered Jackson's. "They've got their own scientists on payroll." "Then we need better evidence," Jackson replied, studying the boundaries. "Trail cameras in these sectors might catch the wolverines denning." This was their 3rd strategy session in 2 weeks. The coalition had grown to include most landowners in the valley, all facing similar pressure to sell or risk eminent domain proceedings. What they lacked in resources, they made up for in determination and intimate knowledge of the land Blackwood Development sought to transform. "Jackson," Maya said quietly when the others had left, "this is good, but it's not enough. We need legal firepower." "With what money?" He gathered the maps tiredly. "Already mortgaged everything I could." "Then maybe it's time to consider Olivia's offer to help." Jackson's jaw tightened. "No. Your pride could cost us everything." "It's not pride." He turned to the window, watching spring rain sweep across the mountains. "We don't know what game she's playing." "Or maybe," Maya suggested gently, "she's not playing any game at all." In Boston, Olivia sat in her father's cavernous office, back straight, voice steady as she presented her findings. "These documents show systematic fraud across multiple joint ventures," she concluded. "Curtis has been siphoning funds for at least 3 years." Robert Reed's face remained impassive, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "And you believe the Montana property acquisition is connected?" "I know it is." Olivia brought up satellite images on her tablet. "This is the ranch where I stayed after the crash. 1 week after I disappeared, Blackwood Development expedited this proposal, targeting this specific property for eminent domain seizure." Her father studied her with new attention. "You seem invested in this particular case." "The owner saved my life," Olivia replied simply. "I owe him." Robert leaned back, fingers steepled. "You understand what you're asking? If we move against Curtis, the merger falls apart. Stock prices will take a hit. Your engagement is already over," Olivia interrupted, touching her bare ring finger. "I ended it last week." For a moment, her father looked almost proud. "What exactly do you want, Olivia?" "I want Reed Innovations to withdraw from all joint ventures with Blackwood Development, citing contractual breaches. I want us to submit evidence of financial improprieties to the SEC." She took a breath. "And I want us to formally oppose the Montana resort development on environmental and ethical grounds." "That's quite a list of demands." "They're not demands, Dad." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "They're the right things to do." After a long moment, Robert nodded once. "Draw up the paperwork, but understand this will get ugly. Curtis won't go down without a fight. I'm counting on it." Later that evening, Olivia worked late in her office, coordinating with Reed Innovations' legal team. Eleanor entered with coffee and a concerned expression. "Curtis is in the building," she warned. Security called up. Moments later, Curtis burst through the door, his usual polish cracking. "What the hell do you think you're doing? 3 years of partnership negotiations gone because you decided to play detective." Olivia remained seated, outwardly calm despite her racing heart. "You committed fraud, Curtis. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? This is about that cowboy, isn't it?" His handsome face twisted with disdain. "Your little wilderness romance while you were finding yourself? This is about you breaking the law." She stood to face him. "And yes, Also about you targeting innocent people out of spite. Curtis laughed coldly. You really think a dirt-poor rancher can make you happy? You'll be back begging for civilization within a month. You never understood what makes me happy, Olivia replied. That's why I never signed those papers. His expression darkened. Your father won't back you on this. He knows what's at stake. Actually, he already has. She nodded toward the door. Security is waiting to escort you out. As Curtis was led away, hurling threats about lawsuits and ruination, Eleanor handed Olivia a business card. Environmental law specialist, she explained. Best in the business for fighting developments like the one in Montana. Olivia took the card gratefully. Thank you. But I don't think Jackson would accept help from me, even indirectly. Then don't tell him where it's coming from, Eleanor suggested pragmatically. Sometimes pride needs to be managed from a distance. In Montana, the battle intensified. Blackwood Development sent representatives to meet individually with coalition members, offering increasingly generous buyouts to fracture the group's solidarity. 2 smaller ranchers accepted, unable to resist financial security after years of struggle. Meanwhile, Jackson worked tirelessly, setting up wildlife cameras documenting water quality in streams that would be affected by construction, rallying community support at town meetings. He slept little, ate less, and pushed himself to exhaustion daily, as if physical labor could erase Olivia from his thoughts. One evening, Maya found him mending fences in the rain. "This can wait until tomorrow," she shouted over the downpour. "Storm's coming," he replied without looking up. "Need it done now." "Not the weather storm, the legal one." She handed him a folder protected in plastic. "Notice for the zoning hearing, 2 weeks from now." Jackson took it with muddy hands. "Sooner than we expected. They're fast-tracking it, and there's more." Maya hesitated. Blackwood Development is flying in their executive team from Boston, including Curtis Blackwood himself. That night, after a hot shower and change of clothes, Jackson sat on his porch watching lightning split the sky. Midnight whinnied nervously in the barn, where all the animals had been secured against the storm. Jackson's phone lit up with a text notification, the same unknown number as before. "They've moved the hearing up. I'm coming to Montana. We need to talk." His thumb hovered over the reply button before he set the phone down without responding. Whatever Olivia was planning, he'd fight his battles his own way. He'd built his life around self-reliance. Depending on her now felt like a betrayal of everything he stood for. Yet, as thunder shook the cabin, he couldn't help remembering how she'd looked in the same storm 2 months ago. Wounded but determined, vulnerability and strength in equal measure. The memory refused to fade, no matter how hard he worked to exhaust himself. In Boston, Olivia methodically built her case against Curtis, working closely with Reed Innovations' legal department and the environmental specialists Eleanor had recommended. She'd requested a transfer to oversee the company's nascent sustainable technology division, a move her father surprisingly supported. "You've changed," he observed during a rare personal dinner. "Montana agreed with you." Olivia considered this. "I think it was more about who I was there, what was expected of me, or rather what wasn't." "This rancher," Robert began cautiously. "Jackson Thorne, tell me about him." She smiled despite herself. "Stubborn, principled, works harder than anyone I've ever met, reads Frost, and pretends it doesn't matter to him. Sounds nothing like Curtis." "That's the highest compliment you could give him," Olivia laughed. Her father studied her with new eyes. "You know, your mother was nothing like the women I was supposed to marry. Banking family wanted me with someone from our circle." He swirled his wine thoughtfully. "Best decision I ever made, ignoring their expectations." "You never talk about her." "Because it hurts," he admitted. "But seeing you now, this new determination, reminds me of her." The conversation marked a subtle shift in their relationship, a newfound respect flowing both ways. When Olivia proposed relocating the Sustainable Technology Division to Bozeman, Montana, Robert didn't immediately dismiss the idea as he once would have. "Tax incentives are better there," she argued. "Lower operating costs, quality of life to attract talent, proximity to research universities. And we'd be making a statement about our commitment to environmental responsibility." "You've thought this through," her father acknowledged. "Draft a proposal." As the zoning hearing approached, Olivia worked feverishly on multiple fronts: the case against Curtis, the division relocation proposal, and the legal strategy for opposing the resort development. She slept on her office couch most nights, while Eleanor managed a growing team of researchers and legal experts. "You need to pace yourself," Eleanor warned, finding Olivia asleep among scattered documents one morning. "No time," Olivia mumbled, accepting the coffee Eleanor offered. "Hearings in 10 days. And you'll be useless if you collapse." Eleanor sat across from her. "May I speak frankly? When have you ever not? This isn't just about corporate fraud or environmental protection anymore." Eleanor's gaze was penetrating. "This is personal for you. This rancher, Jackson," Olivia supplied. "Yes. What happens after you help save his ranch? Have you thought that far ahead?" Olivia stared into her coffee. "He may not want anything to do with me afterward. He made that pretty clear. But if he did?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but not unexamined. In Montana, Jackson's coalition had been dealt another blow. The environmental review they'd requested had been expedited and dismissed, the state authorities citing insufficient evidence of impact. "They didn't even look at our camera footage," Maya fumed as they drove back from a disappointing meeting with county officials. "This whole thing is rigged." Jackson stared out the window at the land his family had worked for generations. "We still have the zoning hearing. Against a team of corporate lawyers?" Maya shook her head. "We need help, Jackson." "Been getting some," he admitted reluctantly. "Anonymous legal advice showing up in my email, detailed strategies." Maya glanced at him. "And you didn't think to mention this?" "Can't prove it, but has Olivia written all over it. So she's helping from a distance because you're too stubborn to accept help directly." Maya almost smiled. "Smart woman. Doesn't change anything," Jackson insisted. "Doesn't it? Maybe it's time to swallow some pride," and Maya's suggestion was cut short as they rounded the bend to Jackson's ranch and found a black SUV parked outside his cabin. A man in an expensive suit stood on the porch, examining the structure with calculating eyes. Jackson was out of the truck before Maya had fully stopped, striding toward the intruder. "You're trespassing." The man turned, unruffled. "Mr. Thorne, I presume." "Curtis Blackwood." He extended a manicured hand that Jackson ignored. "I thought it was time we met in person." "Nothing to discuss," Jackson replied coldly. "Get off my land." Curtis smiled thinly. "Your land? I think we both know that's a temporary condition." He glanced around dismissively. "I must say I expected something more impressive, given Olivia's fascination." Jackson's hands clenched at his sides. "Say what you came to say, then leave." "Direct, I can appreciate that." Curtis straightened his tie. "I'm here to make you a final offer. Double the market value plus relocation assistance. Much more generous than what will happen after the hearing." "Not interested." "Mr. Thorne," Curtis's voice hardened, "I'm not sure you understand. This development is happening. The only question is whether you walk away with something or nothing." Maya joined them, standing shoulder to shoulder with her brother. "I think you should leave now, Mr. Blackwood." Curtis assessed them both, then shrugged elegantly. "As you wish. But know this, Olivia Reed was slumming when she stayed here, playing cowgirl during her little breakdown. Whatever she told you, whatever happened between you," his smile turned cruel, "it wasn't real. Not for someone like her." After he'd gone, Jackson stood motionless on the porch, Curtis's words echoing painfully because they mirrored his own darkest doubts. "He's wrong," Maya said quietly. "Is he?" Jackson turned to his sister. "You saw the news reports, saw her life. I saw how she looked at you," Maya countered. That was real. That night, as Jackson lay awake replaying Curtis's visit, his phone lit up one more time. "Arriving tomorrow. Meeting our lawyer at 2 p.m. Maya has the details. Please be there. Our lawyer." Two simple words that somehow bridged the worlds between them. After long minutes of internal debate, Jackson finally typed back, "I'll be there." The county courthouse in Morrison was rarely full. Today, every bench was packed. Ranchers in clean but worn shirts and jeans on one side, suits and business attire on the other. At the center table sat Jackson, Maya, and a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, who'd introduced herself as Patricia Holden, environmental law specialist. "Remember," Patricia murmured as they waited, "stick to the facts, wildlife impact, watershed concerns, historical significance of the land, no emotional appeals." Jackson nodded, tugging uncomfortably at his collar. He'd worn his one suit last used at his grandfather's funeral 10 years ago. His hands, rough from work, seemed out of place on the polished table. Across the aisle, Curtis Blackwood sat with his legal team, exuding confidence. He caught Jackson's eye and smiled thinly, raising his water glass in mock toast. "Where is she?" Maya whispered, checking her watch. The hearing would start in 5 minutes, and Olivia had yet to appear. Jackson kept his expression neutral, though the same question burned in him. Their only communication had been that brief text exchange. Part of him had suspected she wouldn't show, that when it came to actually standing publicly against her world for his, she'd reconsider. The doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Heads turned as Olivia walked in, dressed in a simple but elegant navy suit, her hair pulled back professionally. She wasn't alone. Behind her came Eleanor and 2 men carrying document boxes, followed by 4 serious-looking individuals in dark suits. Curtis's smile faltered as he recognized them. "Federal agents," he muttered to his lawyer. Olivia walked directly to Jackson's table. Their eyes met for the first time in over a month. "You came," he said quietly. "I said I would." She took the seat beside him, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of her perfume, something expensive but subtle, nothing like the wildflowers she'd smelled of at the ranch. Before they could say more, the hearing was called to order. The process began with Blackwood Development's presentation, slick visuals showing the proposed resort, promises of jobs and economic revitalization, assurances of minimal environmental impact. "This project represents a $300 million investment in Morrison County," Curtis concluded smoothly. "We've addressed all environmental concerns and have complied with every regulation. The public benefit is clear and substantial." Patricia presented their case next, methodically outlining the coalition's objections: wildlife disruption, water quality risks, questionable job creation figures. She was competent and thorough, but Jackson could see the zoning commissioner's attention wavering. Their arguments, while valid, lacked the polish and promise of Blackwood's presentation. As Patricia finished, the lead commissioner looked at his colleagues. "Unless there are other official objections, we'll move to deliberation." "There is another objection." Olivia stood, her voice clear and confident. "Reed Innovations opposes this development on multiple grounds." A murmur swept through the room. Curtis half rose from his seat. "This is irregular. Reed Innovations is a partner in this project." "Not anymore." Olivia nodded to Eleanor, who distributed documents to the commissioners. "As of yesterday, Reed Innovations has terminated all partnerships with Blackwood Development, citing breach of contract and evidence of financial improprieties." Curtis's face darkened. "You can't do this." "I already have," Olivia continued, addressing the commissioners. "Beyond the environmental concerns already presented, there are serious legal issues with this proposal. The federal agents present today are investigating Mr. Blackwood for wire fraud, bribery of government officials, and environmental violations." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. The commissioners called for order while Curtis huddled with his lawyers, their expressions grave. Jackson sat stunned, watching Olivia command the room with an authority he'd never witnessed during her time at the ranch. When order was restored, Olivia delivered her final blow. Additionally, Reed Innovations is announcing the establishment of the Morrison Valley Conservation Trust, permanently protecting 20,000 acres, including the Thorn Ranch and surrounding properties, from development. She passed more documents forward. "We're also relocating our Sustainable Technology Division to Bozeman, creating 200 environmentally responsible jobs that won't require destroying the land we claim to value." The hearing dissolved into procedural arguments between lawyers. The commissioners, overwhelmed by the federal involvement and new information, called a recess to consult with county counsel. In the courthouse hallway, Curtis confronted Olivia, his composure cracking. "You've made a serious mistake," he hissed. "I'll fight this." "From jail, perhaps," Olivia replied calmly as federal agents approached. "Agent Miller, I believe you wanted to speak with Mr. Blackwood." Jackson watched from a distance as Curtis was led away, not under arrest, but clearly not free to leave either. The man's arrogance had dissolved, replaced by the desperate calculation of someone seeing their future crumble. When Olivia finally turned to Jackson, her professional mask softened. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" They found an empty conference room. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of unresolved feelings hanging between them. "The Conservation Trust," Jackson finally said. "That's permanent," Olivia nodded. "The land will be protected, but you'll retain ownership and usage rights. There's funding for sustainable ranching practices, wildlife protection, educational programs." "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do." She met his eyes. "And because I care what happens to your home." Jackson studied her, so different in this setting, yet unmistakably the same woman who had ridden beside him, helped birth calves, gentled midnight. "This isn't your fight. It became my fight the day you carried me off that mountainside." Olivia stepped closer. "Jackson, I'm sorry for not telling you who I was sooner. I should have once I started remembering. Would it have changed anything? Us?" The question had haunted him for weeks. "I don't know." Her honesty was refreshing. "But I'd like to think we could have figured it out together." Before Jackson could respond, Maya burst in. "They're calling everyone back. The commissioners want to make a statement." The courtroom settled quickly as the lead commissioner cleared his throat. "In light of the unexpected developments today, this commission is tabling the eminent domain proceedings indefinitely. The federal investigation takes precedence, and the Conservation Trust proposal will require separate evaluation." It wasn't a definitive victory, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. As people filed out, many stopped to shake Jackson's hand or pat his shoulder. The coalition members gathered around, relief evident on their weathered faces. "We did it," Maya whispered, hugging her brother. "Olivia did it," he corrected, searching the crowd for her. He found her outside on the courthouse steps, speaking quietly with Eleanor. "Thank you," he said simply when she noticed him. "Don't thank me yet," Olivia replied. "Curtis has resources and connections. This isn't over, but it's a start." He gestured to the mountains visible beyond the town. "Your corporate world suits you. Never would have guessed it seeing you at the ranch." Something flickered in her eyes. "Different worlds don't have to be incompatible, Jackson, don't they?" He looked down at his calloused hands, then at her manicured ones. "What happens now? You go back to Boston, run your company, and what? Send Christmas cards to the country folk." "That's not fair," she said softly. "Maybe not," he sighed. "But I need to know. Was Curtis right? Was I just an experience for you? Something different while you figured your life out? Is that what you think?" Hurt flashed across her face. "After everything?" "I don't know what to think," Jackson admitted. "I just know you fit into my world for a while. I'm not sure I'd fit into yours." People streamed around them, the day's events already becoming local legend. The dramatic hearing, the heiress against her fiancé, the conservation victory. But between Jackson and Olivia, the most important questions remained unanswered. "Come to dinner tonight," she said suddenly. "The ranch. We can talk properly." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "I'll be there." That evening, Jackson arrived to find Olivia had transformed his kitchen. Candles lit the rustic space, and delicious smells wafted from dishes she'd clearly prepared herself, not the work of hired help. "You cooked," he observed, surprised. "You taught me a few things while I was here." She smiled, setting a bottle of wine beside simpler fare than he'd expected. "Venison stew, fresh bread, garden vegetables. Nothing fancy. I thought familiar would be better." They ate with the easy rhythm they'd developed during her stay, conversation flowing naturally despite the underlying tension. She told him about the evidence against Curtis, the changing relationship with her father, her vision for the sustainable technology division. "It's not just for show," she insisted. "There's real potential for innovations that could help ranchers like you. More efficient water systems, renewable energy adaptations for remote locations." "And where do you fit in all this?" Jackson asked. "Boston? Bozeman? Both?" Olivia set down her glass. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether there's anyone worth staying for." Her gaze was steady, vulnerable, yet determined. "I meant what I said, Jackson. Different worlds can overlap. Mine did, here with you." Outside, a spring storm gathered, not unlike the one that had raged the night he'd brought her to the cabin. Thunder rumbled as Jackson considered her words. "I've spent my whole life in one place," he said finally, "following one path, until you literally fell from the sky." He smiled slightly at the memory. "Nothing's been the same since." "Is that good or bad?" she asked quietly. Instead of answering, Jackson stood and extended his hand. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." The rain had just begun as they drove to the spot where he'd found her after the crash. The mountainside looked different now, green with spring growth, wildflowers pushing through where charred helicopter debris had been cleared away. "This is where everything changed," Jackson said, as they stood under the shelter of a pine tree, rain pattering around them. "For both of us." "Jackson," Olivia began, but he gently placed a finger over her lips. "Let me finish. I've been angry because I thought you had a choice, to tell me who you were, to go back to your world, to leave mine behind." He took a deep breath. "But we all have choices, including me. And I chose not to see that you were fighting for us in your own way, even when I pushed you away." Lightning illuminated her face. Hopeful, rain-speckled, beautiful. "I was lost long before I fell from the sky," she whispered, echoing words she'd once said in his dreams. "You didn't just save my life that day. We saved each other," he finished, drawing her closer. Their kiss was different from their first. Not tentative, but certain, bridging worlds that perhaps weren't so separate after all. Later, as they returned to the ranch, Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple band forged from a horseshoe nail. "I made this after you left," he admitted. "Not sure why." Olivia took it, slipping it onto her finger. "I think you knew." "It's not a diamond," he warned. "I've had diamonds," she replied, looking at the crude ring with more tenderness than she'd ever shown the expensive one Curtis had given her. "This means more." That night, as the storm passed and stars emerged, they talked until dawn, of practical matters and impossible dreams, of compromises and possibilities, of a future neither had imagined before a helicopter crashed and changed everything. "We have your world," Jackson said, tracing her cheek with his fingertip. "We have mine. Maybe we build something new between them." As first light touched the mountains, Olivia curled against him on the porch swing, watching his land, their land, emerge from darkness. "I'd like that," she murmured. "I'd like that very much." Autumn painted the Morrison Valley in amber and gold, the aspens shimmering with each breeze. Jackson worked methodically, repairing the north pasture fence while Midnight grazed nearby, no longer confined to the corral. The horse had become his shadow since learning to trust again, not unlike his owner. The sound of tires on gravel announced Olivia's return. Jackson straightened, watching her SUV navigate the familiar drive. She'd been in Bozeman for 3 days, overseeing construction of the new Reed Innovations facility. Though only an hour away, any separation still stirred anxiety in him, a lingering fear that she might not return, that reality would reclaim her. Olivia climbed out, business attire exchanged for jeans and a sweater, her hair loose in the mountain wind. She walked to him with the easy confidence of someone coming home. "Fence still winning?" she asked, kissing him lightly. "Putting up a good fight." He nodded toward Midnight. "He missed you." "Just him." Her smile was teasing. Jackson pulled her closer. "Maybe not just him." 5 months had passed since the courthouse confrontation. Summer had brought changes neither could have predicted. Curtis facing federal charges, the Conservation Trust taking shape, Olivia dividing her time between corporate responsibilities and ranch life. Their worlds had collided, then gradually imperfectly begun to merge. "How's the facility coming?" Jackson asked as they walked hand in hand toward the cabin. "On schedule. We'll start moving equipment next month." Pride colored her voice. "The solar array is magnificent. We'll generate more power than we use." "Your father still planning to visit next week?" Olivia nodded. "He's bringing the board members. They're skeptical about relocating operations from Boston, but Dad's backing me completely." Their relationship had transformed since the courtroom battle, Robert Reed acknowledging his daughter's vision and strength, Olivia understanding the pressures that had shaped his controlling nature. After initial awkwardness, he'd even begun to appreciate Jackson, recognizing in the rancher's independence something he secretly admired. Inside the cabin, changes reflected their evolving life together. Jackson's sparse furnishings now coexisted with touches of Olivia's aesthetic: better lighting, softer textiles, artwork featuring local landscapes. The guest room had become her office, where cutting-edge technology connected her to Boston, while mountain views reminded her why she'd chosen this dual existence. Maya called, Jackson said, washing up at the sink. She and Eleanor want us for dinner Saturday. At their new place? Olivia smiled, still amazed by how that particular relationship had blossomed. Her corporate assistant and Jackson's veterinarian sister finding unexpected connection through the conservation project. They're finally finished renovating. Jackson dried his hands. Eleanor insists we bring wine from someplace with a French name, whatever that means. Olivia laughed. I'll handle that part. As evening settled over the mountains, they sat on the porch with steaming mugs of coffee, a ritual they'd established. These quiet moments anchored them amid the whirlwind of their evolving lives. I got another offer on the Boston penthouse, Olivia mentioned casually. Should I take it? Jackson studied her face. That's your decision. I'm asking what you think. She curled her feet beneath her on the swing. Would selling make this feel more permanent to you? The question touched their ongoing negotiation of commitment and independence. Jackson had been careful not to pressure her, conscious of the sacrifices she'd already made. Do you need to sell it to feel this is permanent? He countered gently. Olivia considered this. No. But I want you to know I'm not keeping escape routes open. I know that. He took her hand, thumb brushing over the horseshoe nail ring she still wore alongside the more conventional engagement ring he'd given her 2 months ago. Keep the penthouse if it makes practical sense. Sell it if you want. Either way, I know where your heart is. Later, reviewing conservation trust documents at the kitchen table, they discussed plans for the educational center that would occupy part of the ranch, teaching sustainable agriculture, wildlife management, and rural technology integration. The architectural plans are ready, Olivia said, spreading blueprints between them. We can break ground in spring. Jackson studied the designs. Using the old North Barn foundation is smart. My grandfather would have approved. Speaking of family legacy, Olivia began carefully, I've been thinking about the ranch name. Thorn Ranch has been on maps since 1923, Jackson noted. I know, and we should preserve that. She hesitated. But what about Thornreed Conservation Ranch? To reflect both our contributions? The suggestion touched Jackson deeply, not just the acknowledgement of their partnership, but her desire to root herself in his land, his history. I'd be honored, he said simply. The next morning brought Maya and Eleanor coffee and pastries in hand, arriving early to discuss the wildlife rehabilitation center they were establishing on adjacent trust land. The permits finally came through, Maya announced, spreading documents across the table. We can start accepting injured animals next month. Eleanor, still adjusting to country life after years in Boston's corporate world, had thrown herself into the conservation work with unexpected passion. The educational programs are fully funded, she added. Schools are already scheduling spring field trips. As they talked, Jackson watched the 3 women, his sister, his fiancée, and the city woman who'd become family, and marveled at how naturally they worked together despite their different backgrounds. His world had expanded rather than been replaced, growing richer through connection rather than isolation. The following week brought Robert Reed and the Reed Innovations Board members to Montana. The visit began with a tour of the Bozeman facility construction site, followed by a catered lunch at the ranch. Jackson had anticipated discomfort, wealthy executives examining his modest home with urban disdain, but found most genuinely curious about the conservation initiative. This valley has remarkable potential, observed one board member, surveying the mountains. Not just for preservation, but for sustainable innovation testing. Robert, watching his daughter confidently field questions about resource management, seemed almost wistful. She gets her vision from her mother, he told Jackson quietly. I always focused on what to build. Catherine understood what to protect. The visit culminated with approval for additional funding for the Sustainable Technology Division, a victory that left Olivia glowing with vindication. That evening, after the executives had returned to Bozeman, she and Jackson celebrated with a bottle of champagne on the ridge overlooking their land. 2 new beginnings, she toasted, echoing words Curtis had once mockingly offered. And old foundations, Jackson added, clinking his glass against hers. Under starlight, they discussed wedding plans, a spring ceremony on the ranch, blending elements of both their worlds. They decided on a small gathering with family and close friends, though Olivia's definition of small still made Jackson chuckle. 50 people is intimate, she insisted. My father's first suggestion was 300. The entire county only has 2,000, Jackson pointed out. They compromised on 75 guests, with wildflowers instead of imported blooms. Local catering supplemented by a renowned chef Olivia knew, and music from both a string quartet and the local ranchers band. As autumn deepened toward winter, they settled into peaceful routine. Mornings on the ranch, afternoons often split between Jackson's land management and Olivia's corporate responsibilities. Evenings belonged to them alone, building the foundation of their shared life. One crisp November morning, as the first snow dusted the mountain peaks, they rode to the far boundary of the property. Jackson on his chestnut mare, Olivia on Midnight, who now accepted no other rider. "Remember when you said he was too wild to trust?" Olivia patted the horse's sleek neck. "That some animals can't be tamed." "I was wrong about a lot of things," Jackson admitted, watching them together. They dismounted at a promontory overlooking the valley, where conservation trust markers now protected the wilderness from development. In the distance, the framework of the Reed Innovations facility rose against the mountains, not an intrusion, but an integration designed to harmonize with the landscape. "Sometimes, I still can't believe this is my life," Olivia said, breathing in the cold, clean air. "That helicopter crash was the worst thing that ever happened to me." Jackson wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Still feel like you're caught between two worlds?" She considered the question. "No," she finally said. "It feels more like we've created our own." In December, news came that Curtis Blackwood had accepted a plea deal, avoiding trial but facing substantial fines and restrictions on future business activities. The resort development was permanently shelved, the land incorporated into the Conservation Trust. "It's really over," Olivia said, when the legal team called with confirmation. That evening, they hosted Christmas dinner in the expanded cabin, Maya and Eleanor, Robert Reed, who now occupied a small guest house he'd built on the property, and a few close neighbors who'd become friends through the conservation battle. Robert, retired now and discovering unexpected joy in woodworking, had built an elaborate birdhouse modeled after the main ranch house. "For the wedding," he explained gruffly as he presented it. "Every home needs birds." After dinner, Jackson led Olivia outside to see his gift, a restored 1965 Land Rover, practical for ranch work, yet historic enough to satisfy her appreciation for craftsmanship. "It's perfect," she whispered, running her hand along the polished hood. "Exactly what I would have chosen." "One more thing," Jackson said, guiding her to the barn. Inside, Midnight's stall had been expanded and renovated. On the door hung a small brass plaque, "Midnight Reedthorn." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "Our first joint family member." "First of many, I hope," Jackson replied softly. As winter settled fully over Montana, bringing quiet days and firelit evenings, they finalized plans for their spring wedding. The date was set for April, 1 year after the helicopter crash that had brought them together. "Tempting fate?" Maya had asked when they chose the anniversary. "Honoring it," Olivia corrected. "Without that crash, we'd never have found each other." On a snowy February evening, Jackson found Olivia in her office conferencing with Boston executives. She concluded the meeting efficiently, then turned to him with a smile. "Sorry that ran long. Budget discussions always do." "No problem." He sat in the chair across from her desk. "Wanted to show you something." He placed a worn journal on her desk, his grandfather's records of the ranch dating back decades. "Been reading through this, thinking about the future, what we might build together." Olivia opened it carefully, touching the faded handwriting with reverence. "I'm honored you'd share this with me." "There's more." Jackson reached for her hand. "I've been thinking about what you said, creating our own world instead of trying to balance between two. What if we expanded that idea?" He outlined a vision that had been forming in his mind, using part of the ranch and conservation trust to create a rural innovation center where traditional ranching knowledge could meet cutting-edge sustainability technology. "A place where people like me could learn from people like you and vice versa," he explained, bridging the gap between tradition and innovation. Olivia's eyes lit with excitement. A partnership in the truest sense, using Reed resources and Thornland to create something entirely new. "Exactly." He squeezed her hand. "Would mean changes, more people, less isolation." "Are you ready for that?" she asked, knowing how he valued his solitude. Jackson smiled. the certainty in his heart reflected in his eyes. "With you, I'm ready for anything." As they refined the concept long into the night, snow fell silently outside, covering the land in pristine white, a blank canvas for the future they were designing together, a foundation built on different worlds that had crashed into each other through fate or luck or whatever force had sent a helicopter spiraling from the sky one spring morning, forever changing both their paths. "To think," Olivia mused as they finally headed to bed, arms wrapped around each other for warmth, "a year ago we were strangers." "And now?" Jackson asked, already knowing the answer. She smiled up at him, the horseshoe nail ring catching the soft light. "Now we're home." 5 years had passed since the helicopter crash that changed everything. The Morrison Valley had transformed, not into the luxury resort Curtis Blackwood had envisioned, but into something far more meaningful. The Thornreed Conservation Ranch now served as both working cattle operation and nationally recognized education center, where traditional ranching practices merged with sustainable innovation. On this particular June morning, Jackson stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching a familiar scene unfold in the corral. 3-year-old Catherine Thornreed, named for Olivia's mother, sat atop a gentle pony, her small hands gripping the saddle horn with determination. Olivia walked alongside, one hand hovering near their daughter's back, ready to catch her if needed. "Daddy, look!" Catherine called, her dark hair so like Jackson's escaping from its braid. "I'm doing it myself." "I see that, Wildcat," he replied, using the nickname that had stuck since her first steps. Always running, never walking, fearless in a way that both terrified and delighted him. Olivia caught his eye across the yard, sharing a moment of parental pride. She'd adapted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything, finding balance between corporate leadership and family life. The Reed Innovations Sustainable Technology Division in Bozeman had flourished under her direction, while their home remained firmly anchored at the ranch. Jackson descended the porch steps, coffee mug in hand, to join them at the corral. "She's a natural," he observed. "Like her father," Olivia smiled, reaching for his free hand. "Stubborn like her mother," he countered with a wink. Catherine made another circuit of the corral, beaming with accomplishment. At 3, she already showed both her father's affinity for animals and her mother's sharp intelligence, a perfect blend of their worlds. "Ready for today's crowd?" Olivia asked, checking her watch. The educational center would be hosting 70 students from Bozeman elementary schools, part of their regular programming. "Maya and Eleanor have everything organized," Jackson assured her. "The new wildlife rehabilitation viewing area is ready for the grand opening." The Wildlife Center had become Maya's passion project, with Eleanor handling the administrative and fundraising aspects. Their partnership, both professional and personal, had flourished alongside Jackson and Olivia's. Just last year, they'd married in a ceremony overlooking the same mountains where Jackson and Olivia had exchanged their vows. After Catherine's riding lesson, the family walked together toward the main conservation center, a thoughtfully designed complex that incorporated the original barn structure with modern, sustainable additions. Solar panels gleamed on south-facing roofs, and rainwater collection systems fed the native plant demonstration gardens. "Mr. Thornreed," called one of the young interns, jogging toward them. "The water quality researchers from Montana State are here early. They've brought the new testing equipment." "I'll handle it," Jackson replied, kissing Olivia quickly. "Meet you for lunch?" She nodded, lifting Catherine into her arms. "We'll be giving Mom and Dad the tour when they arrive." Robert Reed had sold his Boston mansion after retirement, dividing his time between the small cabin he'd built on the ranch property and traveling the world, something he'd never allowed himself to do during his working years. His relationship with his granddaughter had softened him further, revealing the warm, patient man who'd been buried beneath decades of corporate pressure. By midday, the Conservation Center buzzed with activity, students exploring the interactive exhibits, researchers collecting data, tourists learning about sustainable ranching practices. Jackson moved through it all with comfortable authority, no longer the isolated rancher, but a respected conservationist who bridged traditional knowledge and innovation. In the center's small conference room, he found Olivia reviewing plans with the architect for their next expansion phase, overnight accommodations for visiting researchers and educational groups. "The council approved the permits this morning." She looked up with a smile, We can break ground next month." "Perfect timing," Jackson replied, joining her at the table. "The university partnership is bringing more graduate students than we can currently house." Robert entered with Catherine on his shoulders, the little girl chattering excitedly about the baby foxes she'd seen at Maya's rehabilitation center. The former corporate titan now wore casual clothes and a full beard, looking more like a naturalist than a CEO. "This one," he said, lifting Catherine down, "has been negotiating for a fox of her own. She drives a hard bargain, definitely a Reed." "With thorn stubbornness," Olivia added, smoothing her daughter's wild hair. "Quite the combination." Lunchtime brought their extended family together at the main house, Maya and Eleanor joining them, with news about the rehabilitation center's latest success stories. The conversation flowed easily between wildlife protection strategies, Catherine's upcoming preschool adventures, and community developments. "Have you heard from Curtis lately?" Maya asked as they cleared dishes afterward. The question casual but weighted with history. Olivia shook her head. "Not since the final settlement 2 years ago. Last I heard, he'd moved to Europe to reinvent himself. Curtis Blackwood's legal troubles had eventually cost him his company and reputation. The man who had once threatened everything they valued was now a distant memory, his power over their lives long dissipated." "Good riddance," Eleanor muttered, having witnessed firsthand the damage he'd tried to cause. Later that afternoon, as the educational groups departed and the center quieted, Jackson and Olivia took Catherine for their daily ritual, a ride to the ridge overlooking the valley. Jackson carried their daughter on his saddle, while Olivia rode beside them on Midnight, the once wild horse now a steadfast companion, though still selective about who he allowed near him. At the crest of the hill they dismounted, letting Catherine explore the wildflowers under their watchful eyes. Below them stretched the valley, the conservation center, the ranch operations, and in the distance, the gleaming facility of Reed Innovations' Sustainable Technology Division. "I got the test results back," Olivia said quietly, her hand finding Jackson's. "We're having a boy." Joy spread across his face as he pulled her close. "You're sure?" She nodded, eyes bright. "Due in January. Catherine will have a brother." They watched their daughter crouch to examine a butterfly with intense concentration, the same focus Jackson brought to his conservation work, the same curiosity Olivia applied to her innovations. "Think we should start planning an expansion to the house?" Jackson asked, his hand gently resting on Olivia's still flat stomach. "Already ahead of you." She smiled. "The architect is bringing preliminary drawings next week." As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, casting long shadows across the land they'd fought to protect, Jackson reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the wounded helicopter crash survivor he'd carried down this very mountainside to the partner who now stood beside him, helping guide their shared vision. Olivia had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," he admitted, watching Catherine chase the butterfly through the grass. "That crash. Finding you. Everything that followed. Some people spend their lives searching for treasure in all the wrong places," Olivia replied, leaning against his shoulder, never realizing that sometimes true wealth crashes into your life when you least expect it. Catherine ran back to them, wildflowers clutched in her small fist. "For the dinner table," she announced proudly. As they mounted their horses for the ride home, the setting sun gilded the mountains with the same golden light that had illuminated their first kiss on this ridge years ago. The valley below, their valley, represented everything they'd built together. A conservation legacy, a thriving business, an educational mission, and most importantly, a family bridging worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart. The lonely cowboy and the millionaire heiress had found something neither had been looking for, but both had needed. Not just love, but purpose, partnership, and a home where both could truly belong. Their unlikely beginning had led to a future neither could have imagined alone, proof that sometimes life's worst moments can lead to its greatest. Blessings. As they rode back down the mountain, Catherine's laughter floating on the evening breeze, Olivia reached across to take Jackson's hand. No words were needed between them anymore, just the simple, profound understanding of two people who had saved each other in the mountains and continued to do so, in different ways, every day since. The horseshoe nail ring still gleamed on Olivia's finger alongside her wedding band, a reminder of how far they'd come from that stormy day when a wounded stranger and a lonely cowboy had begun writing their unexpected story together. 5 years had transformed not just the land and their lives, but something deeper. The understanding that wealth came in many forms, that different worlds could not only coexist, but strengthen each other, and that sometimes the most profound love stories begin with a crash landing.